Okay, I was going to start off with a little quip about how I got 7 minutes to describe a whole project, work package, and I get 10 minutes to show you an Excel sheet, which is the output of this thing. But I suppose of the tools that will be demonstrated during this part of the day, this is the less tooly, if you like, of those. It's simply GIS maps, a data repository that stakeholders and anyone with an interest in coastal artificial structures and their placement around our coasts of Ireland and of Wales can go to. As I mentioned earlier on, I knew I had 10 minutes to fill, so I reused some of my slides. Huh? No, and I won't. And so some of the slides that I'm going to present again, and just to highlight that the hard work that Brian has done over the course of his PhD to actually produce. So I mentioned it's just an Excel sheet, but it's an Excel sheet with an awful lot of work behind it. So we won't undervalue the fact of what's gone in to produce this Excel sheet. Or Excel data sheet at the back end. As I mentioned earlier on, Brian spent an awful lot of time staring at a computer, using Google Earth to evaluate all of the structures, irrespective of their size, along the whole coastline of Wales and from Louth to Cork on the Irish side. We weren't allowed to go any higher within Ireland because it was outside of the Interreg area, and we didn't quite get all the way. I think Brian ran out of steam, so we didn't quite get all the way past Cork on the bottom end, because I think it also includes parts of Limerick, and I think Brian just got very, very tired once he evaluated those structures. And as I mentioned this morning, almost 7,000 of those structures of different sizes that he measured throughout the course of that piece of work. What I mentioned this morning, not only did he sort of put some coordinates in there, he also measured the abundance and length of those structures across those given areas. He measured and evaluated some of the intrinsic and extrinsic characteristics of those structures. And then with the maps was able to indicate the proportion of these structures or the densities of these structures along our coastline. That data set is now available up on a repository, Zenodo repository. I forgot to mention this morning, if you Google Ecostructure and Zenodo, that repository will pop up. You can go in, you can have a look at that repository. There's a little note within that repository. It has its own DOI. It has contact details, my own contact details, and they've given me a new job, so I will be within UCD for a number of years now as well. So the email address that's there is still valid for a good few years. It's restricted access at the moment, but you can go in, you can request access to it. I'll respond to you. You just tell me why you want the data set, because there are ongoing publications with those data sets as well. Associated with that are GIS maps, but it's in a PDF form at the moment. I'll update it after this conference and throw in some shape files, GIS shape files as well, associated with it, and add and update this repository as the moratorium end for each one of those elements associated with the Work Package 2 data set. So as those publications come about, we'll release the data going forward as well. I also mentioned in terms of during Work Package 2 and the models that we created. So we have models at a quadrat level, three-dimensional models. for quadrat level. We also have them at the site scale, and indeed drone footage and three-dimensional models of those data. There's a link in on that Zenodo website that tells you it's available on a Google Drive. I will provide that Google Drive address. Again, you just email me, tell me why you want it, and I can give you access to it as well. And again, that's because currently, even though we're coming towards end of project, there's still a number of publications ongoing in terms of those data sets as well. But they will become available and will be the legacy of the project that we leave behind all of this data that we have collected over the duration of the project as well. So in terms of that data set, I don't know if I really have to show you a live version of that Zenodo repository. It does contain just an Excel sheet and a PDF at the moment, but it is quite a powerful data set in terms of the first of its kind across the Irish Sea. There are intrinsic and extrinsic characteristics of all those artificial structures that allow stakeholders to utilize that data as they see fit to evaluate the density of those structures, the types of those structures, whereabouts those structures might be located. And indeed, that's something Brian has done in terms of trying to evaluate the development of those artificial structures along those shorelines. So these are examples given from Ireland and looking at the proportion of shoreline replaced per county. So it might be something that Ruth had mentioned in terms of regional government or regional authorities might be interested in evaluating that at a regional level, or local county councils might be interested at evaluating it down at their county council remit along that particular area of coastline. So there are many, many uses across this data set that can be utilized, even in terms of whether you're getting higher concentrations in urban areas versus rural areas, the material that these structures are composed of, whether they occur in exposed versus sheltered areas and so on and so forth, or whether they occur in estuarine areas more so than anywhere else. So I'm not going to teach you how to suck eggs. The database is there. It's there for your use. And as long as it's a justifiable reason for us to release that data set to you, we'll very happily do so. I said I'd finish on this slide just from Peter's question earlier on, where I had, so this is in an Irish context, where the total coastal length is 1,880 kilometres of that area that we surveyed from Louth down to Cork. And the replacement of the coastline is 316 kilometres of that. And so that results in approximately an 8% net gain in the hard coastline that occurs within this given area. We also recorded the nearest type of habitat, the distance to the nearest source population, as Veronica had mentioned earlier on. So there are many, many uses that stakeholders can use this type of set for as well. Okay, so I'm going to park the less tooly of the tools and pass over to the guys who will describe the more tooly of the tools that we've developed during the Ecostructure project.